The WNBA has found itself in the kind of controversy that no amount of highlight reels or feel-good promos can wash away. At the center of it all, Caitlin Clark, the league's most bankable star, its ticket-selling phenom. The reason casual sports fans are even talking about women's basketball this year. And yet, instead of celebrating her and protecting the asset she is, the WNBA has allowed her to become a punching bag. Literally, game after game. Clark has been targeted with physical fouls that go beyond tough basketball and into the realm of outright cheap shots. The moment that crystallized the outrage came when Chennedy Carter delivered that now infamous off-ball shove, the kind that makes fans gasp before they even realize what's happening. It wasn't a hard play for the ball. It wasn't a collision in the heat of a fast break. It was a calculated, shoulder-driven blow when Clark wasn't even looking. You're here for the real story and not the filtered version. Subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. The ref's response? A common foul. The league's response? Silence. And that silence was deafening. Because if this had been an isolated incident, maybe fans could chalk it up to a bad call. But this show was just the latest in a series of hits, shoves, and blindsides Clark has endured since her rookie season began. Chennedy Carter's moment just happened to be the one caught in perfect, unforgiving HD, ready to be clipped, replayed, and spread across every social media platform in existence. The backlash was immediate. Clips of the shove racked up millions of views. Sports pundits and casual fans alike demanded to know why the WNBA wasn't doing more to protect its star. Former players weighed in. Stephen A. Smith called out on national TV, pushing the idea that what happened to Clark wasn't just bad sportsmanship. It could be the start of something much bigger, possibly even a civil rights issue. That's not just talk. Indiana Congressman Jim Banks has already sent a formal letter to the league, demanding answers about why Clark has been repeatedly targeted without meaningful consequences for the players delivering these hits. In that letter, Banks didn't just frame it as a sports issue. He positioned it as a workplace safety concern and potentially a violation of Clark's civil rights. Why civil rights? Because the growing argument is that Clark's treatment is not just a result of rookie hazing or competitive play, but something tied to who she is, a young, white, ultra-marketable player who's quickly become the face of the league in a way that disrupts the existing hierarchy. If a pattern emerges showing she's being treated differently because of that identity, the WNBA isn't just facing PR trouble, it's facing possible legal exposure. It's worth noting, the numbers around Clark's impact aren't just impressive, they're historic. Since she entered the league, viewership has spiked. Merchandise sales are up across the board, with her jersey regularly selling out. Indiana Fever ticket prices have skyrocketed. Broadcast ratings for games she plays and dwarf those without her. Simply put, Clark is money, which makes the league's inaction even more baffling. Protecting her should be a no-brainer, not in the sense of giving her special treatment on the court, but in the same way any sports league protects its marquee talent. The NBA protects LeBron. The NFL protects quarterbacks. MLB protects its star hitters. It's basic business sense. When your star draws in the audience, you keep them safe enough to keep playing. Instead, the WNBA has let Clark take hit after hit with little more than a shrug. That's not just a failure of officiating. That's a failure of leadership. And here's where the Chennedy Carter shove becomes so symbolic. It wasn't just one player taking a shot at Clark. It was a test of the league's backbone. Would Commissioner Kathy Engelbert make an example out of Carter to send a message? Or would she let it slide, signaling to the rest of the league that this kind of play is fine? The answer, so far, has been the latter, and the result is exactly what you'd expect. More aggressive off-ball contact toward Clark, more crowd frustration, and more fuel for the growing theory that the league is either indifferent to her safety or, worse, willing to let this drama play out because it drives clicks and conversations. That theory gained even more weight when the Wall Street Journal ran a piece suggesting Clark's treatment could be framed as a civil rights matter. The idea being, if an employee, which is what players are, is subjected to a hostile work environment because of who they are, and the employer does nothing to stop it, that employer can be held accountable under federal law. Clark's agent has allegedly been pushing for this angle. 2, urging that the issue be brought to federal attention. And now, thanks to Congressman Banks and the national spotlight, That's exactly what's happening. What started as a shove in a basketball game is now an active political talking point with legal implications. But here's the wild part. While Clark's case is dominating headlines, it's also pulling back the curtain on broader cultural issues inside the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham, another outspoken player, has publicly criticized Dana Bonner for a lack of professionalism toward teammates, hinting at a culture where player-to-player respect isn't as strong as the league likes to portray in its glossy marketing. If that's true, Clark's treatment might not be an isolated failure, but part of a larger pattern of internal accountability problems. From a business perspective, this is the exact opposite of what the WNBA needs right now. The league has been riding a wave of growth thanks to Clark's popularity, new media deals, and expanded sponsorship interest. But growth isn't just about numbers. It's about reputation. If the reputation becomes a league where stars get targeted and nobody cares, that growth will be short-lived. Fans are already restless. Fever home games are filled with both roaring support for Clark and audible anger whenever she takes another hit without a call. On social media, the conversation isn't just about her scoring or her leadership. It's about whether she's going to make it through the season without an injury. That's a dangerous storyline for any league. The solution seems obvious to outsiders. Make players' safety a visible priority. Hand out real suspensions for off-ball aggression. Issue public statements reinforcing the league's zero-tolerance policy for targeted fouls. Show fans, sponsors, and players alike that leadership is in control. Instead, we've gotten the opposite, a kind of stone-cold silence that leaves a vacuum for speculation, conspiracy theories, and political spin. And in that vacuum, the WNBA risks losing control of its own story. If the federal investigation gains momentum, it will pull everything into the light. Internal emails, officiating reports, even player statements about what's been said behind closed doors. That level of scrutiny doesn't just resolve the Caitlin Clark question. It exposes everything else the league has tried to keep tidy. The clock is ticking for the WNBA to reclaim this narrative. Because right now, the image of the league is being defined not by its rising stars or thrilling games, but by a viral shove and the leadership's failure to respond. If Caitlin Clark ends up sidelined by injury, the league's already weak defense for its inaction will collapse completely. And if that happens under the glare of federal probe, the damage won't just be to the season's bottom line. It'll be to the WNBA's legacy as a whole. The question is no longer, was that shove too much? It's what kind of league lets this happen to its brightest star and why? And until the WNBA can answer that, the hits, both physical and reputational, are going to keep coming. Let's rewind for a moment. Caitlin Clark's arrival in the league wasn't just another rookie signing. It was a seismic event. She came in with the kind of hype you usually only see in the NBA or NFL draft. Record-breaking college numbers, viral highlights, a fan base already baked in from her Iowa days, and a media presence that made her instantly recognizable. The WNBA had been searching for a crossover star for years, and suddenly, here she was. And with her came something leagues dream about: momentum. Ticket sales spiked. Merchandise flew off shelves. Ratings broke records. Entire arenas filled just to watch her play. Home or away. If you're running a professional sports league, this is a kind of once-in-a-generation marketing opportunity you protect at all costs. But here's the catch. Caitlin didn't enter the league in a vacuum. She entered a league with established hierarchies, personalities, and players who have been grinding for years without getting a fraction of her spotlight. That kind of dynamic can create resentment, even if no one wants to admit it publicly. Add in the fact that she plays with swagger, isn't afraid to shoot from anywhere, and already has more endorsement deals than some veterans. And you got the perfect conditions for her to be targeted. And targeted she was. It started with small things. Extra contact on screens, hard closes when she shot, arms getting tangled a little too often. But then the hits started getting more obvious. Off-ball bumps that looked intentional. Elbows thrown in traffic. And then came Chennedy Carter's shove. The shove wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. It said, "You don't run this league, rookie." And the WNBA's handling of it, or rather, their lack of handling, sent its own message. We're not going to step in. This is where the league's leadership truly miscalculated. They had a choice. clamp down hard and make it clear that targeting any player, especially off the ball, would be met with severe consequences, or shrug it off and hope it blew over. They chose the latter. And in choosing that path, they underestimated the world they're operating in now. This is in the 1990s, when a dirty play might get replayed once on the nightly news and then fade away. This is the social media era, where clips live forever, where millions of people can see an incident within minutes, and where narratives are built in real time. So what happened? That shove became a viral moment. The internet dissected it frame by frame. People debated intent. Fans compared it to past cheap shot moments in sport history. And every time someone replayed it, the same question came up: why isn't the league doing anything? Enter the political stage. Congressman Jim Banks didn't just weigh in because he's from Indiana. He saw the bigger opportunity, the chance to frame this as a workplace safety and civil rights issue. In doing so, he escalated the conversation beyond sports. Now, instead of being just a basketball controversy, it was a matter of federal concern. And once politics enter the mix, the stakes skyrocket. If this turns into a formal investigation, the WNBA could be forced to hand over internal communications, officiating reviews, and evidence of how they responded to similar incidents in the past. That's dangerous territory for any league, because it opens the door to accusations of inconsistency, favoritism, or worse, bias. The civil rights angle is what really has people talking. If Clark's treatment can be framed as targeted harassment based on factors beyond her performance, whether that's her race, her status as a rookie, or her outsized marketability, then this becomes a legal minefield. And the league's current radio silence only makes that framing easier for her supporters to push. But here's the thing, this isn't just about Clark's safety. It's about the WNBA's culture. Sophie Cunningham's recent comments about Dana Bonner's lack of courtesy toward teammates might seem unrelated on the surface, but all ties back to the same core issue: professionalism. In a league that's constantly fighting for respect, professionalism isn't just about how players conduct themselves. It's about how the league enforces its own standards. Right now, those standards look shaky. The perception, fair or not, is that the WNBA picks and chooses when to step in, and that it's willing to let some players cross the line if it keeps the spotlight burning. That's a dangerous precedent. Because once players believe there's no consistent accountability, the game starts to break down. You can already see it in the way fans are reacting. Fever games aren't just about basketball anymore. They're about waiting to see if Clark gets hit. And every time she does without a serious consequence, the crowd's anger grows. That kind of tension isn't good for anyone. Not the players, not the officials, and certainly not the league's image. The solution seems obvious. Step in, set the tone, and make it clear that targeting any player, star, or rookie will get you suspended. But here's why the WNBA might be hesitating. They're afraid of looking like they're giving Clark special treatment. In a league that prides itself on parity and unity, singling out one player for protection could spark backlash from veterans and other teams. The problem is that logic only works in theory. In practice, the lack of action is doing more damage than the optics of protecting her ever would. Because to fans and to sponsors, this doesn't look like fairness. It looks like neglect, and sponsors matter. Right now, Clark is a marketing goldmine. Her jersey sells out. Her games get primetime slots. Brands love her because she's talented, telegenic, and universally recognizable. If she gets seriously injured because the league didn't protect her, those brands will notice, and they won't be subtle about their disappointment. That's the hidden pressure point here: corporate money. If enough sponsors start asking why the league's brightest star is being left unprotected, the WNBA will have no choice but to act. Not because of fan outrage, not because of political pressure, but because the financial consequences will be too big to ignore. The irony is, this entire mess could have been avoided with one decisive move. If the WNBA had suspended Chennedy for even a single game, issued a statement reinforcing player safety, and made it clear that they were watching, this probably wouldn't have spiraled into a political and legal issue. Instead, they left a vacuum. And in that vacuum, everyone else, fans, media, lawmakers, has stepped in to tell their own version of the story. Here's the reality the league has to face. This story isn't going away. It's too sticky, too emotional, too easy for people to rally around. It has everything: a likable star, a visible incident, a clear lack of response, and now a political angle. That's a recipe for a controversy that lasts all season and maybe beyond. The longer the WNBA waits to address it, the more they risk letting it define them. And if that happens, they'll be remembered less for the incredible basketball being played right now and more for the fact that they stood by while their brightest star took hit after hit. The question they have to answer isn't just, what do we do about Caitlin Clark? It's, what kind of league are we going to be? Because right now, the message they're sending, intentionally or not, is that even if you're the most marketable player in the game, you can still be left to fend for yourself. And that's not the message you want when you're trying to grow, when you're trying to prove to the world that your league belongs in the same conversation as the NBA, NFL, and MLB. In the end, the shove might go down as one of those moments that change the course of a league, not because of what happened on the court, but because of what it exposed off of it. And if the WNBA doesn't course correct soon, it won't be remembered for how they rose to the challenge. It'll be remembered for how they let it break them. The first crack? Accountability. The league's silence after that shove sent a clear message to everyone watching, players, fans, coaches, sponsors, that there's no urgency to deal with unsportsmanlike conduct if it doesn't fit neatly into the narrative the WNBA wants to tell. It's not just about Clark. It's about whether the league is willing to enforce standards consistently, even when it's messy. Sports history is filled with moments where leagues had to act decisively to protect players and maintain credibility. The NBA has suspended superstars mid-playoff run for on-court fights. The NFL has sidelined pro bowlers for helmet-to-helmet hits. Those weren't easy calls, but they were necessary to show that rules apply to everyone. In this case, the WNBA seems afraid to take a stand. Maybe worried that punishing Carter too harshly would upset her team, alienate certain players, or create perception of favoritism toward Clark. But here's the reality. Choosing not to act is still a choice, and inaction has consequences. The second crack? Culture inside the league. For all the glossy promos about sisterhood and unity, the WNBA, like any professional league, has rivalries, personality clashes, and politics. Sophie Cunningham's public criticism of Dana Bonner's lack of courtesy toward teammates hints at deeper undercurrents. Grudges, territorialism, and an unspoken pecking order that new players are expected to earn their way into. Clark didn't come in like a typical rookie. She didn't have to grind for years to get attention. It was there from day one. That disrupts the unspoken rules of the locker room. Veterans who've been overlooked might see her fame as unearned. And in a contact sport, resentment often shows up as physicality. Now, in a healthy league culture, those tensions get managed. Coaches keep it in check. The league sets boundaries. Rivalries stay competitive without crossing into cheap shots. But when there's no strong response from leadership, those boundaries blur fast. The third crack? Business priorities versus player protection. Right now, Clark is the face of the league's growth. She's in commercials. She's selling jerseys. She's driving record viewership numbers. But business growth is a balancing act. It can't come at the expense of player welfare. If fans start believing the WNBA is using Clark for ratings while letting her take unchecked hits for drama, the league's reputation will tank. We've seen this movie before in other sports. UFC letting fighters go on too long for the sake of hype. The NFL ignoring concussion protocols for years. Boxing commissions turning a blind eye to dangerous mismatches. In every case, the short-term spectacle eventually gave way to long-term backlash. The WNBA is at that crossroads now. They can either protect their stars and build sustainable respect, or they can milk the controversy for attention and hope no one gets seriously hurt. The first path builds credibility. The second ends in lawsuits. And speaking of lawsuits, that's the fourth crack, legal vulnerability. Jim Banks' letter wasn't just political theater. By framing this as a workplace safety and potential civil rights issue, he planted the seeds for a full-scale legal challenge. If lawyers get involved, they'll start looking for patterns, game footage, officiating reports, internal memos, anything that shows whether Clark is being treated differently and whether the league failed to address it. If that turns up evidence of selective enforcement or bias, the WNBA could be in serious trouble. And unlike PR scandals, legal findings can't just be papered over with a new ad campaign. The fifth crack? Loss of narrative control. Right now, the WNBA isn't telling its own story. Other people are. Media personalities, politicians, and fans are all driving the conversation. Every day they stay silent, the more the story belongs to someone else. This is where the Carter shove has become almost symbolic beyond its reality. It's not just about her and Clark. It's about whether the WNBA is willing to be the grown-up in the room. Because here's the thing, the league can fix this, but they can't fix it by hoping it goes away. They can't fix it with vague statements about competitive spirit or respecting the game. They need clear, visible action. Suspend players for off-ball aggression. Clarify officiating standards for physical contact. Hold a press conference reaffirming zero tolerance for targeted fouls. Show fans that protecting players isn't negotiable. And it's not just about appeasing Clark's fan base. It's about sending a message to every player that the WNBA will protect them. Because here's the nightmare scenario. Another young star comes into the league next year and gets the same treatment. Or worse. Clark gets seriously injured. At that point, the league wouldn't just be dealing with a PR fire. They'd be dealing with a full-blown credibility collapse. Sponsors would start pulling back. Parents of future players would question whether the WNBA is a safe and professional environment. And the league's carefully built growth over the last few years could stall or even reverse. The truth is, Caitlin Clark's situation is more than just a player safety issue. It's a test of the WNBA's maturity as a professional sports league. Are they ready to operate with the same consistency, transparency, and accountability as the NBA, NFL, or MLB? Or are they going to be seen as a niche operation that lets personal politics and internal grudges dictate the rules? Right now, they're leaning toward the latter, and everyone can see it. The Carter show will live on as a clip that gets replayed for years. But the real legacy of this moment will be how the league responded. Did they step in and set a precedent? Or did they let it spiral into something bigger, letting others control the narrative until it turned into a federal investigation? If they choose silence, they're not just leaving Clark exposed. They're leaving themselves exposed to legal risks, to sponsor backlash, to long-term damage that no one highlight reel dunk or buzzer beater can fix. And if they think this is just about one player, they're wrong. This is about every athlete in the WNBA now wondering, if that happened to me, would they protect me? That's the question hanging over every game. And until the league answers it with action, every hit Clark takes is going to feel like another hit to their own credibility. The show was 1 second of play. The fallout could define the WNBA for years.